I think everyone needs to figure out for themselves how to prepare themselves. You know, I'm saying I expect some collapse in the monetary system as the next night begins. But I would not be able to guide or to advise anybody else, because there are so many considerations. People will have to follow their own inner guidance. The right thing for one person might not be the right thing for another. And what I would say is follow the guidance and be true to your own purpose. And still, but don't challenge fate. In other words, don't challenge fate. Be aware that things become difficult in the years ahead, and still be faithful to who you are and what your purpose is. I don't recommending withdrawing from this process, because I believe that will be a way of disconnecting you from it. And well, withdrawing would be to buy a bunker in the wilderness and fill it with spam. I don't believe that life is about not dying. To begin with, and that's a life of just not dying, and but I can't generalize either. I mean, for someone this might be the right thing. I don't know where I see it going. I see it going back, essentially. So the thing to understand these different underworlds and the kind of effects that they've had on our monetary systems is that it's not just some kind of a linear, straight evolution. Each underworld carries its own particular wave movement, and it brings about its own particular change. So the one we're up on now, I think fundamentally is about balancing the effects of some of the earlier underworlds. And one of those was, for instance, the point where the gold standard was completely abolished, meaning that money becomes something that's just purely in the minds of people based on whatever agreements they have as to its value. Now, that means that, in a sense, that they actually have no value at all, if you want to look upon it strictly. And I think what is happening now is a change in the minds of people, where people are starting to realize this. And as that change happens in how people perceive money, we will see a downfall of all these kind of simply agreement-based currencies. I see us only valuing concrete, real values. Gold is that, but so is many other things.
Tangible.
Tangible, yeah.
Useful thing.
Yeah. And, you know, I'd like to come back what you told me earlier. You had listened to Bill Clinton being interviewed on Larry King, saying that over a year, a third of the world's wealth had disappeared. Now, when you think about it, if you look around, actually none of the world's wealth had disappeared, because everything that has true value is still around, even after this year. All that has changed was this, that the numbers in the computers of the stock exchanges and the banks and so forth had been depreciated by a third, had gone down by a third. And I think this is a very good way of illustrating when I say that it will be a collapse of this abstract value, that we will no longer look for those digits in the computers, and we will look for what's real and real values, and that's what's still left, and nothing of that has disappeared.
So how would you, given the shift, you bring up a very interesting thing. It's like the collapse of the financial system really hasn't affected Main Street. Restaurants are still filled. People have lost their jobs, but you could argue that those people are just being reallocated into other more useful parts of the economy. In the process of, we're driving up deficits at an alarming rate, and people are screaming that we're going to destroy the country because of that. But are you suggesting that there's a possibility that this path that we're on, that people are saying is unsustainable, is in fact the proper path? Because when you take out the paper money supply, it doesn't matter if there's debt or asset, or it doesn't matter if you're in the black or the red. You're just moving society forward.
That I couldn't understand, actually. Could you? I didn't understand it.
Well, I mean, right now, everybody's complaining about the deficits of every country.
Right, yeah. And especially the Western countries, yes. Yeah.
Deficits.
Yeah.
If paper money is kind of like, get pushed aside.
Yeah.
Which is probably what the Western countries are going to have to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Perhaps it's the proper path.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get at.
I see what you're saying.
The path we're on, everybody's complaining about, but it may be this is exactly the proper path.
Oh yeah, right. No, that's my feeling, and I wouldn't be surprised if when the sixth night begins, whether there will be some movements coming up asking for a moratorium of all debts, because of this, what I've been talking about, how the shift is going to what's real, and why pay a bank forever. No.
I like what you're talking about, but especially talk about the path we're on. It's the people complaining about the path we're on with huge debts and stuff like that are people resisting and wanting to hang on to the old world. The new world is what we're moving towards.
Yes, yes, and So I think that in the time ahead with these difficulties, I think one important aspect is for people to develop networks of sharing what they have. But I think there will also have to be some kind of a moratorium of debts. I read Michael Moore describing from Flint, Michigan, and saying what it's like to live in a city where every other house has been abandoned because of foreclosures. And is that going? If that's going, is that going to be the reality? Or there will be another choice, is to say, just forget about all these debts and let people live in their houses that they used to live in, and so forth. And it all comes back to the same theme that I'm talking about, the collapse of the abstract idea of value and the return to the actual concrete physical reality.
So if you're suggesting that the abstract world of financial wealth collapses, there would be no reason to hoard.
That's right. Right. It would. It would probably satisfy the needs, the basic needs of a lot of people, and at the same time,
Let's talk about that. Yeah. Let's talk about that.
We only have 2 minutes.